One time, a lady in Alpharetta, Georgia, charged me $1,000 to sign her own name. She had me by the throat, and she knew it, and she squeezed. This is her kitchen, or where it used to be. Somebody had torn it out and just walked away. There were holes punched through the walls in almost every room. From the street, it was the nicest house I'd seen all week. She was 3 weeks away from foreclosure. I bought it from her, sold it in 2 days, and made $50,000. But I laid in bed that night after the closing, and I wondered if I was a bad person. It took a year and 4 people going to prison for me to understand that I wasn't. So today I'm going to tell you this entire deal, including the parts that make me look bad. Then I'm going to introduce you to 4 people, real names, real sentences, who do this exact job and are now in prison or on probation because of it. And by the end, you'll know exactly where the line is, and you can tell me whether I crossed it. Quick catch up. If you're new here, I run a U.S. real estate business from Bangkok, Thailand. We buy houses and we wholesale houses. I've done 1,000 deals and I do it 8,000 miles away from every single one of them. So today's question is simple. Is wholesaling real estate legal? And is it ethical? I'm not neutral, obviously, but I'm going to give you the honest answer instead of the comfortable one. Here's what happens if you type, "Is wholesaling a scam?" into Google. You get 2 answers, and they're both wrong. Reddit tells you it's predatory and should be illegal. And a guy renting a Lamborghini by the hour, he tells you it's a legal loophole and just stop asking so many questions. Here's what's actually true. Wholesaling is legal in all 50 states, and it's not a loophole. Signing a contract is one of the oldest rights in American law. What puts wholesalers in prison isn't wholesaling, it's fraud. And fraud was already illegal before any of us showed up here. Which means this entire argument is aimed at the wrong target. Everybody fights about the contract. The contract was never the problem. The person holding the contract was the problem. So here's the plan. My deal in full. Then we'll talk about 4 real people named with real sentences and real lawsuits. Then the actual legal line, including the new state laws that just made half of what YouTube teaches you a crime. And then the 3 things that decide which side of that line that you end up on. I'm not a lawyer, none of this is legal advice, and the ground is moving under this business right now. I highly encourage you not to take legal advice from some guy screaming at a camera on YouTube from the other side of the planet. But here we go. She called us. You see, that matters. And you'll see why in about 8 minutes. She called me. So I drove out to Alpharetta and I pulled up. And I actually double-checked the address because the house was beautiful. Brand new siding, brand new roof. Wow. From the curb, this was not a distressed property. This was a really nice home. And she opened the door. I walked inside. No kitchen. Not a bad kitchen, no kitchen. Ripped down to the pipes, holes in the walls. Wow. They were literally using a tiny little refrigerator that they had in their living room. The inside of the house had been destroyed by somebody who lived there. I call this the curb test, and this business will teach it to you over and over until you never forget it. You cannot tell what a thing is from the outside. Not a house, not a deal, not a person. Hold on to that. It comes back at the end and it means something completely different that's going to blow you away. We sat down in her living room and she told me that she was 3 weeks away from losing the house in a foreclosure. 3 weeks, and she was about to lose the house and everything in it. Well, what was left of it. And the entire time we talked, the entire time, her son was on the loft looking down at us. You know, one of those lofts that you can walk across, kind of like a hallway on a second floor? So he was above us, dressed in all black, slowly pacing back and forth, never taking his eyes off of me. Not sitting, not standing, pacing. And every time I glanced up, he was staring holes through me. He was 18, maybe 19 years old. He never spoke one word. Not a hello, not a goodbye. Not one word. And I was in that house 4 separate times. I'm not going to tell you what I thought in my head was going to happen with that guy. I'll just tell you that I did the entire inspection worried. And that, it really got to me. The whole time I'm just watching him like, what is he doing? What is he thinking? But I just did my job. We walked the house. I priced the repairs. And I made her an offer that put $14,000 in her pocket and no foreclosure on her record. So she said yes. No, she didn't. She said no. She turned me down flat. And here's the thing I didn't appreciate at the time, and that is now really the most important fact of this entire video. I never followed up with her. You know, follow-up is the whole game in this business. Fortunes are made in the follow-up. Every coach on earth will tell you that the money is in the 7th call. With Diane, I made 0. Because I kind of have this rule. When somebody's 3 weeks away from losing their home and they are already kicked down and been beat in the face, and they tell me no, I don't harass them. I'm not going to be the 5th vulture circling a woman on the worst day of her life. If she wants me, she had my number. And sure enough, she called me a few days later. Same house, same living room, same teenager, pacing, silent, watching. We went through the whole thing again. And at the end, she said no. Then she called me a 3rd time, a couple of days later. It was on a Sunday. I drove out all the way again. And he was up there again watching me. At this point, I'm like, what are we even doing here? I gave her the same number. I never raised my offer, not even once, not by $1. And she turned me down flat again. Then she called me a 4th time. Oh, I went back up there again. I walked in and she said, Jason, I'm ready. And she signed. She was going to avoid foreclosure. She was going to walk away with 14 grand instead of nothing. And her son stood up there and just watched her do it. And he looked like he wanted to put me through a wall. But he never said a word. Hold on to that. Because I need you to remember that she told me no 3 times, and that every single time she picked up the phone and called me back. In about 6 minutes, I'm going to show you what this business looks like when it happens the other way around. And one of those men is doing 7 years in prison. The Alpharetta deal closed. I put it under contract. I took it to my buyers, and in 2 days, I assigned that contract for a $50,000 profit. 2 days on a house I never owned, never repaired, never picked up a hammer in. And then a few days after closing, after that house was legally on paper, not hers anymore, Diane went back in. She smashed a window and broke in the house. I'll come back to that. Sanford Solmen, Brooklyn, New York, 68 years old, disbarred attorney. For 10 years, he found homeowners in foreclosure. Kind of like the same customer I found. Same desperation, same deadline, same kitchen table. He told them that he was a financial expert who could negotiate with their lender and save them from the bank. He put papers in front of them, and what those people were actually signing was their deed. Literally their house transferred to a corporation that he controlled. Then he would evict them. He rented their homes out. He collected around $500,000 in rent on houses that he had tricked people into handing him. And he targeted minority homeowners specifically. November 2025, 2.5 to 7 years in prison, 13 counts of criminal possession of stolen property, 3 counts of first-degree scheme to defraud, grand larceny. Now, hear what he was not convicted of. He wasn't convicted of wholesaling. He wasn't convicted of assigning a contract. He was convicted of lying to a person in order to steal their house. That's not a real estate crime. That's a theft with a notary used as a gun. Corey Evans, out of California. And this one should scare anyone who thinks that a big brand can keep them safe. Evans wasn't just some guy with a bandit sign. He ran one of the top franchises in the country for homevestors. The same company that I used to be with. I knew Corey personally. He had done more than 50 deals in the last 2 years before this happened. But in 2020, he pled guilty to 2 felony counts of attempted grand theft of a real property. His victims were 72 and 76 years old. ProPublica investigated the company and found that franchisees were trained, in their words, to find the pain. But sit with this for a second. The franchise was legal. The marketing was legal. There's nothing wrong with finding the pain and trying to help solve a problem for somebody. Their contracts were legal. But what Corey did was not. He crossed the line. And even though he was a nice guy and I'd spoken to him several times, he went beyond what we are supposed to do. And he violated that oath of trust that we have with the public. Mark Salke, Queens, New York. Between 2022 and 2024, he forged documents to take the home of a 92-year-old woman with dementia. He moved strangers into her house. He took about $148,000 from her. The New York Attorney General charged him with 23 crimes. And then there's Arizona, March 2025. The Arizona Attorney General sued an entire network, investors, title companies, law firms, under the state's Consumer Fraud Act and under its RICO Act. That's the Racketeering Act that they went after the mob with. Here's the scheme. The moment a foreclosure notice got posted, door knockers were dispatched, within minutes posing as foreclosure relief specialists and charity workers. Using a fake nonprofit, they invented something called Arizona's Helping Hands to strip the equity out of those homes before the owners understood what was happening. Door knockers on a foreclosure list within minutes. That's the same list that I was on. The same house, the same woman, 3 weeks from the auction, sitting in the same chair, same business, same tool, same customer. And one version of it ends with a check, and the other of it ends with prison. So the question stops being, is wholesaling legal? The question becomes, what is the actual difference between me and Sanford Solmen? And it's a smaller difference than you're going to want it to be. When you put a house under contract, you own something. You don't own the house, you own what's called equitable interest, the legal right to buy that house at that price. And that's a real asset. In this country, you're allowed to sell a thing that you own. So when I wholesale, I'm not selling a house, I'm selling my contract. That's why it's legal, and it's been legal for 200 years. But here's the whole ball game. The second you start behaving like you're selling the house instead of the contract, you become a broker and you're brokering real estate without a license. And that is a crime in every state. So, 2 doors. Door number 1, you control the contract. You have the right, the intent, and the ability to close on it yourself. The seller knows in writing that you can assign it. You take your contract to your buyers and you close on the date that you promised. Door 2, you never intended to buy it. You never had the money. You lock up the house and go shop it to strangers on Facebook like it's a listing. And you can't close on it. You're not an investor. You're an unlicensed agent with extra steps. And if you lied to get that signature, you're not an agent either. You're Solmen. And the states, well, they're done waiting. Illinois, more than 1 wholesale deal in 12 months without a broker's license, and you're breaking the law. 1. South Carolina has effectively banned unlicensed wholesaling. Oklahoma passed something called the Predatory Real Estate Wholesaler Prohibition Act. You must disclose in writing that you have an intent to assign and that you don't hold title. Ohio, Connecticut, Maryland, North Dakota, Tennessee, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, new licensing laws, new disclosure laws. 6 new laws across 5 states in 2025 alone. California is working on it right now. And look at what every single one of those laws actually demands. Disclosure. Just tell the seller what you are. Tell them that you might not be the buyer. Tell them that you may make money on the assignment. Which means the legislature of nearly every state in this country has slowly, expensively arrived at the exact same test that a decent person arrives at for free in about 4 seconds. Would you be ashamed if the seller found out exactly what you made? I call it the grandma test. If your grandmother sat in that chair and watched the entire thing, first phone call to final wire, would she be proud of you? That's it. That's the entire compliance department. But I have a problem because Diane never asked me what I made on her house, and I never told her. So let's go back and let's talk about that broken window. The window, honestly, I still don't know. She said she'd forgotten something inside. I don't know why she didn't just ask to go back in. It was really strange. The house wasn't hers. The deal had closed. They had changed the locks. The money had been wired and she broke through a window to get back in. I've never had a really good theory on why she did that. That's not the part that really settled this for me though. Remember the $1,000 that I mentioned in the beginning? 2 days after closing, my phone rings. It's the closing attorney and he's freaking out. They had missed signing a document, something that was really important for the entire transaction, and they needed her signature. And if the deal came apart, I'd have to send them my $50,000 back. So think about the position I'm in. The money's already in my account, and the only person on earth who can let me keep it is good old Diane. She doesn't need me anymore. She's already been paid. She's already out of the foreclosure. She's already smashed the window and taken whatever. She had me completely, and she knew it. She charged me $1,000 to sign her name on that document. She looked at a man who had just made 50 grand on her house and found the one moment in the entire transaction where she held every card in the deck, and she squeezed me. And I paid it happily, instantly, within the hour. I literally drove up on a Sunday afternoon and took care of it in cash. I videotaped the entire thing in case she said something was done wrong. Because that was the day the moral dilemma ended for me. The story I'd been telling myself in bed that night as I laid there wondering about the ethics of what I was doing was that maybe I'd taken advantage of a woman who didn't understand what was happening. But look at what actually happened. She called me. I never once called her. She told me no multiple times. I never raised my price. I never chased her. She waited for a week with her son standing over her. And as an adult, she chose. And the instant she had leverage over me, whew, she used it without blinking. And she got paid a second time, even though it was just a little bit. Diane was no victim. That's a woman in an impossible spot playing a bad hand about as well as it can be played. And here's what she was actually buying from me, which is the thing that nobody in this argument ever says out loud. She and her son had a gutted house with no kitchen, holes in the walls, and they had 3 weeks. No agent could list it, no retail buyer could get a loan on it. There's no version of the MLS that would save her. She had no buyers, and I had spent years and years building a list of them. What she bought from me was a date on the calendar where her nightmare ended. That's the product. That's what $50,000 bought. But I still failed the grandma test. Not on the price, on the silence. She never asked me what I made, and I was relieved that she didn't. And being relieved is how you know. So I changed it. Now the seller hears the words out loud on the first call and sees them in the contract. I may not be the person who buys this. I might assign it. I'm going to try to make money on doing that. And you know what happens when I say that? Sometimes people laugh, but almost nobody cares. Because you're not selling them on a price. You're selling them on certainty. The disclosure doesn't cost you the deal. The disclosure is what lets you sleep. I've watched a lot of people try this business and fail, and it comes down to 3 things. Not talent, not money, not license. 3 things. Number 1, you won't screw over grandma. Not you won't get caught, but simply you won't do it. Because Sanford Solmen, he didn't wake up one morning and decide to become a criminal. He took a small shortcut on a Tuesday. It worked. Nobody stopped him. And 10 years later, he found himself in a cell. Every one of those sentences starts exactly the same way. 2, you're driven enough to work long time before it pays you. I made $50,000 in 2 days on Diane's house, but it took me years to build that buyer's list. And that buyer's list is what made those 2 days possible. There's no version of this business that you skip the work. 3, you'll put down everything you think you know and plug into a system that already works. This is the one that kills smart people. The smarter you are, the more you want to improve the system before you've ever run it. Run it 100 times, then come to me with your opinion. That's the whole list. Ethics, drive, and the humility to follow the map. You don't need a degree. You don't need money. You don't even need to be in the United States. I do this from the other side of the planet. And if you want the exact language I use to disclose the assignment to a seller, like the actual words, the ones that keep you legal under every one of those new state laws, well, just put contract below, and I'll be glad to send it to you for free, no charge. Take it, use it. I'd rather you have it than end up as a name in a video like this one. Remember the curb test? From the street, that house was the nicest one I'd seen all week, and the inside was destroyed. The business is the opposite. From the street, it looks ugly. Bandit signs, rented Lamborghinis, and guys preying on grandma. But what you can't tell from the curb is about the inside. You just have to make sure that if somebody ever walks inside of your business, that they'll love what they find. I hope you've enjoyed this content. I really enjoy making it for you. Please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this video. If you'd like that free contract in that language, say contract and I'll send it to you absolutely for free. Please watch this next video up here. I think you're gonna really love it. I talk about something that's going to help you so much in your business. Thank you. Have a good one. See ya.